right, welcome back to the Tectonic Takes podcast. We have a special episode today. This is episode 96, so the countdown to our 100 episode milestone continues. And within this last stretch before we get there, we had to do at least one more collaboration with our friends who cover another MLS club. And this time it's a post-match podcast, so we're going to focus on what happened on Saturday, September 16th for this one between the San Jose Earthquakes and Real Salt Lake. With me today is Abram. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Big win yesterday. I'm still recovering from all the shouting and all the signing I got done. Like I was standing out there for a long time, so my body is just recovering. But I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. And with us today is our guest from the Royal Riot Podcast. We have Hayden Nielsen. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'd be doing a little bit better if the result went RSL's way last night, but other than that, I'm doing fantastic.
Right. So that's the unfortunate thing. There's always, not always true in soccer because there's draws, but because of the way sports work, rarely are both sides going to be happy after a result. But it was a fun match, not just because we got to be there in person, Abram, myself, Saz, and Abel, but because of how much we've gotten to become friends with you and the rest of the Royal Riot podcasters. It makes it, every time Real Salt Lake and San Jose Earthquakes face off, that much more special, and we look forward to it because of that. And it's all friendly banter at the end of the day, but we respect your opinions, and we know you are very knowledgeable about MLS as a whole, but especially RSL. So just looking forward to your thoughts on how this game went and how this season has been going. So RSL, for the most part, this season has been pretty fun. You've been enjoying a position high up on the table, but that hasn't been exactly the story for the last few games, right?
Right. I don't know. It's definitely been an up and down season for RSL. They started off the season pretty poor, and it wasn't until May that they really started going on a run, and they just went really crazy from May all the way until, Leagues Cup. And ever since then, we haven't had much success. So, yeah, it's been rough. But that summer push really is what got us into this position. But it's really been an up and down season for sure.
All right. Abram, do you have any initial thoughts or questions for Hayden regarding RSL?
Yes. So the ref, I thought that she was great. It was her first professional match. She's the first black woman to be a MLS referee, and I thought that with the pressure surrounding that occasion as well as it being her first ever match, I thought that maybe she might make some mistakes as newer refs tend to do. But I thought that she did really well in favor of us. So I'm always going to be biased, but I'm curious what you thought about the refereeing about this match.
Yeah, no, it's always great when you see new achievements being made, and it's sad that it had to, wait until 2023. But nonetheless, it is amazing that there are new achievements being made, and it's always fun to be a part of history. Now, RSL fans, they're kind of tired of having new referees. I think this is our third or fourth time this season that we've had a ref in their first game. However, she was certainly not the worst out of the three. I can't remember if it was three or four, but she certainly wasn't the worst. Now, there was a couple calls that RSL fans were pretty upset on, or I should say non-calls for the most part, particularly Chicho being brought down in the box. I can't remember which center back it was, but he went down early. Chicho tried to kick the ball over his legs and then got tripped by a flaying leg, and there wasn't anything there. But overall, I don't really have too much. And that's great. When you don't have too much, no words to say is good for the rest, right? It's hard to give too many compliments to refs, I feel like, too often. But yeah, first match. I hope she has a long career, and It was great to be a part of history there.
Yeah, so a bit of a brief overview about your squad. I think that the defense, they've been solid collectively, led by Justin Glad, who has been in the league for almost 10 years, but he's only 26. It's really incredible. And
Right.
then you had a little bit of a goalkeeping battle between McMath and Beavers, two goalkeepers on opposite ends of the age spectrum, and McMath ended up kind of winning that battle. And then in
Yeah.
midfield and attack, you
Mm-hmm.
have some really exciting options that have been more involved later into the season. Diego Luna, after lots of calls to play this kid, like he's really good, and yes, he's proven to be. And then Chicho Arango, of course, one of the big acquisitions of the summer. So overall, how are you feeling about the squad?
This is the most talented squad we've had probably since 2013.
Wow.
Um, and that was, if you guys remember, that was the MLS run where we made it to the final and then lost to Kansas in penalties. But this team is deep. Um, Now the defense, that's got to be the biggest question mark. The center back issues. Justin Glad, while being a veteran, has had a lot of issues this season. He's made a lot of mistakes and put up a lot of question marks. Left back Andrew Brody, he's not a left back, and it's pretty clear it's not working out. In fact, we had Oviedo at left back yesterday and Andrew Brody at right back. Typically, Andrew Brody will be left back, and then we'll have Emeka Anelli as our right back, and we drafted him in, I want to say, late in the first round of this last draft. I think it was the 27th overall pick. But Emeka Anelli has been great back there, and then like you said, up top we have just great attacking players. We have Savarino, we have Diego Luna. Diego Luna, who, like you said, should have been playing a lot earlier. I think a lot of RSL fans had a lot of question marks about why he wasn't played. He really wasn't starting to get played until June. And then obviously that's when we were going crazy with our run of form. Um, Chicho, like you said, has been absolutely fantastic. He's been everything that he was hyped up to be, coming in as, the biggest transfer that we've ever had. That's a lot of pressure to perform, and he's done nothing but perform game in, game out. Chicho has been everything that was advertised for RSL fans, and a proof that spending money is what you need to do in this league, especially up at the top. Um, but yeah, and then you mentioned McMath and Beavers. That's still something that a lot of RSL fans are leading Beavers. They're wanting just to go with the youth. I do like McMath, especially when we're needing stops. I feel like McMath has a pretty high floor, where Beavers might let in some goals that McMath wouldn't. But Beavers is also going to make some saves that McMath simply can't make. And Beavers is younger. He's the prodigy. So a lot of people do want to go with Beavers. However, I'm fine sticking it out with McMath, at least for the end of this year. I think Beavers has gotten plenty of minutes this year, between Open Cup time and Leagues Cup and filling in for McMath here and there. So I think that it's been a very productive season with getting minutes to Beavers. But yeah, this squad has a lot of talent. It's got a little bit of tragedy right now. Obviously, Pablo Ruiz got injured against LAFC in the Leagues Cup game. He's out for the season unless we make a super deep playoff run. But even then, I would be shocked if they, put him in. But that's kind of his timeline is where it would put him, which is huge. I mean, ever since we've missed out on Pablo Ruiz, it's been going downhill. We haven't been able to figure out our midfield. We have two U22s in Ojeda and Palacio. And then we have our third round draft pick from last year, Jasper Loffelson, who is good, but none of them can do what Ruiz can do. And it's been a struggle filling that in. And then Danny Musovski up top. He's our leading goals plus assist guy, and he's holding out right now.
Wow.
And it's really, really bad time to be holding out. And it hurts the team. And I don't think that we'll see him back in an RSL jersey, and I don't think that RSL should let him back in the team at this point.
If,
But yeah, that's the team breakdown.
Nice. Thank you for all of that. Really sorry that it hasn't worked out with Musovski in terms of the holdout. Obviously, is someone that RSL fans want to have in the club, and those things happen, and you just like are watching it unfold, and you're like, come on, how could we not agree to something? With Masovsky and Loffelson, those two names ring a bell for me because those are players that have scored against San Jose Earthquakes. So we're a little bit like, okay, good, not those guys in the lineup when the lineup was announced. So, but I think that definitely a lot of talent in that roster. It's definitely very deep, and I see a lot of parallels in how both Real Salt Lake and San Jose Earthquakes have kind of had to build their roster, and they had to really be smart. And with an influx of youth as well, both teams relying on some players from the U20 USA World Cup roster. In this game, of course, Diego Luna for you, Nico Shakiris for me. One last word on Zach McMath in particular. He's had a very interesting career in MLS. He was the guy for Philadelphia Union in their early days in MLS, and not really no fault of his own, but it just turns out that in the Super Draft, the number one pick that year out of UConn, Andre Blake, so they had to get that guy, and he's done pretty well. He's still at Philadelphia Union to this day. But that kind of interrupted McMath's career. Only 36 appearances in the next 4 years between Vancouver Whitecaps and Colorado Rapids before finding a home in Real Salt Lake, which it's a tough act to follow. When it comes to goalkeepers in Real Salt Lake, Nick Raimondo, he is not just the Real Salt Lake GOAT, he's the MLS goalkeeping GOAT for a reason. So, big shoes to fill. But I think it's an exciting time. And again, the theme of depth, including having two quality goalkeepers that you can rely on. And that's another parallel between Real Salt Lake and San Jose Earthquakes, two teams that have played two goalkeepers this season and ended up going with, Daniel out of R2 here. But yeah, it's really important time in the season, of course. And the big story with the Western Conference is that how crowded it is from second through eighth.
Right.
So pretty much just got to win. Just keep winning. Just keep winning. That's the theme right now. And Abram, we had a bit of a surprise in the lineup. And if you had told me that Jonathan Mensah starting was a surprise in the starting 11 back in May, I'd be like, okay, come on, really? But that's kind of how it's been. Jonathan Mensah has been in and out of the lineup. They've been very vague about the reasons for why Mensah's been missing games. But what were your thoughts when you saw him in the lineup yesterday, Abram?
So I had a chaotic time getting into the stadium, so I didn't get to see the lineup. Mm-hmm. I thought that Mensah would not be in the squad. I was because for context, we brought back Oscar Agrin, who we drafted a year ago, 2 years ago, from Clemson, and he's a very good center back. But he was kind of in the purgatory, caught between MLS and the MLS Next Pro squad, playing with Quakes 2. And we were trying to find a place for him, but he wasn't really making the squad. So we sent him out on loan to the Colorado Switchbacks, and we brought him back. We recalled the loan, which you don't do that unless you need that player. And we have Tanner Beeson on suspension, so we thought, okay, so Mensah's out, Mooney's in, it's just done. We've had struggles with Mensah, off the field mostly. Leading up to this game, so I was just completely convinced Mensah's gone. Then I see him warming up. He's just doing some kick-ups in the middle of the field, like, oh, what are you doing here? I look, he's in the 11, and that was wild. Personally, I'm very happy that he's still on the team and still, going strong. I think he had a really good game last night, and I think Quakes fans, we just really are desperate for some kind of just information about what's going on, what happened. Like, I don't care if they, I want to know what the team rule was. What did he do? Like, I don't care about PR, how they go about it. I just want to know, because at this point we've been held in suspense for a very long time about a player that we love. We do love Jonathan Mensah here, but we're like, did he say something terrible? Should we not be supporting him, or was it small and is Lucci making a big deal out of nothing? We just really want to know at this point, because the usage or lack thereof of Jonathan Mensah it's been really perplexing up to this point. So, I mean, I don't have much to tell you, Ivan. It's really hard to comprehend, uh, much less try to explain what's happening because I know just as much as any Quakes fan out there. It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, it's wild to me that there would be any sort of problem with Jonathan Mensah based on the few times I've been able to interact with him and everything that other people have told me about him. Uh, Based on what I remember of him back in the Stanford game between LA Galaxy and San Jose Earthquakes, he spent a good 5 minutes talking to Favi about going to mountains and hills for photography. He likes to post a lot of the pictures he takes himself on Instagram. So he's a very friendly guy, really cordial, gracious with his time. That being said, someone can be one personality with one group of people, and then someone could not get along with another person, whether that's Richard Gonzalez, whether that's someone higher up, whether that's a member of the training staff, whatever the case may be. But I choose to side on the side of Jonathan Mensah being a plus value to the squad, even if it feels like something has gone wrong and there might be irreparable damage. It's very likely we will not see him in the Quakes jersey in 2024, but in the time being, he got an opportunity to play this game, and he, along with Rodriguez, formed a very formidable partnership. And the game got off to a very fast start. Jeremy Ebobisse scored it within the first 2 minutes, and he's been a player that's been very much not necessarily maligned, but people were starting to question him, thinking that, okay, Ebobisse, this is his game that he has to step up. We said that in the Minnesota game. We said that in the DC United game. So it really felt like if he could step up against RSL, then there was a good chance that the Quakes could still finish the season on a positive note. But if for some reason we were to very significantly slip in the rankings, slip out of the playoffs, Ebobisse was going to take some heat. But he's doing his part, at least in this game, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come. Abram, what did you think of that goal? Because it was a really brilliant give and go kind of move that set it up.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to shout out real quick to Cade Cowell, who did the hard work, won that ball back. I'm sure Hayden is very frustrated about the right side of the field losing the ball so easily, especially to Cade, who's someone who doesn't usually win the ball back, but he has been more proactive in pressuring his opponent on that side. But he won the ball back, and he played a beautiful ball into Ebobisse, just kind of slicing through the midfield. Ebobisse looked up, wasted no time, played it to Espinosa, who he looked like he had no options, but then whoopsie daisy, he puts it through the guy's legs, and Aroba sees him behind, and it was a great finish that we've seen him miss those before. Especially on his right foot when he had to take it first time, he maybe questioned himself and might hit the keeper with the ball, but no. It was a great run. I love seeing this new Ebobisse that we've had in the last maybe 3 games where he's making those runs in behind as opposed to coming really deep and trying to orchestrate play himself. He's being the striker that we want, and he's putting himself in dangerous positions, whether he's scoring the goals or opening space for others to do so. Yeah, it was a great goal, and I was jumping out of my seat because I'm really happy for Jeremy to, be proving his doubters wrong, because I love him as a personality off the pitch. So when he can prove himself on the pitch, it doubles my happiness for him.
Yeah. So as a fan of the team with the best road record in MLS, this probably came as a bit of a surprise for the start of the game, huh, Hayden?
No, not at all. I mean, RSL has been terrible in the first 15 minutes.
Oh, well, there's that
If
stat
you look
too.
at the last, yeah, if you look at the last 7 games, I think we've been scored on in the first 15 minutes in 6 of them. So it's not great. We haven't started off games well, and I mean, that's just more of the same. RSL was a great road team, but it looks like that road team has gone away. It looks like that team died in June, because they just maybe July 1st against Toronto was the last road game we won.
Does Toronto count?
Yes,
Because
right. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if that
Sorry,
counts, but
Colin, our TFC fan friend who was on our podcast early this season, but I think he would be the first to admit that he wants to wipe this season out from his memory as a Toronto fan.
yeah, I don't know if Toronto really gets to count for
Yeah.
much, but yeah, this I don't know. There's a lot to say about Real Salt Lake, but being a team that gives up goals early, that's really one of the biggest areas of concern right now because in this game, a lot of our Cell fans, including myself, felt like we played really well outside of the first 15 minutes and that we deserved 3 points. But you can't just not show up for a big portion of a game and expect to get points out of it, especially when you're on the road in a place where it was a very important 3 points. You know, if RSL gets those 3 points, we put ourselves way above, uh, you know, San Jose. We separate ourselves from eighth place in the West, essentially. And that was big. We'd also, if we got those 3 points last night, we would be sitting pretty all by ourselves. Uh, I guess would be with LAFC, but we would be sitting in second place right now with LAFC, and we have a chance to play LAFC later on in the season, where we can pull away from them as well. So it was a really big missed opportunity, but that first Ebobosi goal came really as no surprise.
Yeah, LAFC also in action around the same time as the RSL Quakes game, and they got the win against LA Galaxy. So it's dog eat dog in the Western Conference right now. Well, the Quakes went from scoring at a time where RSL usually struggled and gave up goals to the Quakes tend to give up a lot of goals at the end of the first half. So that trend continued this time with Chicharito Arango scoring the goal. So Hayden, tell us a little bit about that goal.
It was a funny goal. It didn't really look like it was much. It definitely wasn't the prettiest of goals, but it came at the perfect time. It felt like RSL was going to get a goal soon, so being able to get that one right before halftime really felt good, and I felt confident. I thought we were going to come away with all 3 points in that second half. So it was a big goal. Chicho does what Chicho does, and Savarino obviously created a huge chance. Um, so it's massive to have Savarino actually travel with us. um, for San Jose fans that don't know, Savarino hasn't traveled very much this year. He sits at home for a lot of these away games, so it was great that he actually, went on the road and he was important. So that was nice, but yeah, it was a wacky goal to say the least.
Yeah. It was definitely something where there's a little bit of doubt initially that there was going to be he did cross the line, but then all it took was one replay. It's like, oh, absolutely crossed the line. Like there wasn't any sort of like maybe. It's like no, we knew right away, which was kind of preferable rather than any sort of like will it, won't it sort of situation. Okay,
Right.
2-1. Let's get the ball rolling again and let's see what the Quakes could do, because my mindset going into halftime and during the halftime conversation I had with Abram, Saz, and our friend and listener Braden, thanks for joining us at halftime, was okay, the San Jose Earthquakes showed a lot of character to get to that fast start, to get a 2-0 lead early, especially for a team that they drew their previous two games against Minnesota, DC. They didn't look particularly great in either of them, and they lost the prior two before that. So now they're going to have to show character again to see, okay, how are they going to not just manage the game, but influence the game in the second half? Because we see a lot of the San Jose Earthquakes, they're fine managing the game. They managed to get some big wins like at Seattle this season by game management and holding on for dear life. So that's what I was kind of expecting to be the case in this second half. But it felt like whatever momentum that Real Salt Lake closed the half with, it wasn't quite the same energy to start the second half. Did you feel the same way, Hayden?
Yeah. No, it definitely felt like the second half. I don't know. It just felt like RSL was on the front foot that second half. RSL was taking a lot of shots. They were getting a lot of pressure. But San Jose, I mean, they parked the bus really well. They were able to defend a lot of that. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to even talk about because I feel like it's pretty plain cut and dry. RSL had a lot of opportunities, but San Jose just took the pressure. And the commentator, I can't remember her name, but she said that the first 15 minutes of this half was crucial to the game. Like whoever dominated the first 15 minutes was going to win. And San Jose, they didn't get dominated in the first 15 minutes, and I think that was massive. I wouldn't say either team dominated the first 15, but the fact that they were able to resist initial pressure and force RSL to start making their substitutions, because suddenly there's a big drop off from the likes of Chicho Arango to Demir Krylak, um, and maybe an Andres Gomez for Diego Luna. So there is a pretty decent sized drop off when you can force RSL to make their sub. And San Jose did that. So credit to them. They withstood long enough to get RSL's main attacking pieces off the field.
Yeah, Demir Krylak is another longtime RSL player who has done very well for himself when wearing that jersey. But I think he's in the Leo DiCaprio Revenant phase of his RSL tenure where he's getting that lifetime achievement love, but he hasn't really quite been producing lately. He can still score an important goal here or there, but at the frequency that he once did, probably would be asking a little too much.
Right, exactly right. With Demir Krylak, he's just a little bit too slow at this point in his career. If he gets the ball around anywhere around the 18 and the 18, I expect that ball to go in the net, and he still has the technical ability to do so. But anytime he's asked to hold on to the ball, is asked to make a run, is asked to really do anything else that position needs to do, it's pretty painful to watch. So, man, I hope this is his retirement year. But yeah.
Yeah. It wouldn't be a bad time to go while he's still capable of contributing and playing a role on a game-to-game basis, even if it is mainly off the bench. As for Rodriguez, Abram, he was all over the place in this game. 1 minute, he is driving up the field as if he were a midfielder. And then another minute, he's, without fouling, he's in a wrestling match with Chicho. Both of them are going hardcore at each other, and he somehow wins that aerial duel. So how would you assess Rodriguez's performance in this game? Because it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think that's a good question because how do you assess Rodriguez? Because do you assess him as an attacker or a defender? Sometimes it's complicated, but no, I think Rodriguez consistently has been the best defender on this team. When he is defending, sometimes he is caught on the no man's land and we have to defend without him. But I think he makes up for it with the defensive action that he does make. I I'm just as frustrated as anyone when he tries something fancy and it doesn't work out. I'm not gonna defend those. He does make mistakes. But it's so fun to watch when this man just gets the ball and just starts running, and you're like, is he going to pass it? Nope. He just takes another guy on. He looks like a freight train running through the middle of the field, and he's just so exciting to watch. And that's why I hope that we can make him permanent because he's. I think that his benefits outweigh his negatives, and it's just without any of that, he's just so much fun to watch, and that's why I love coming to the stadium every week to watch Rodriguez and Espinosa and all the other guys. But Rodriguez is just one of the guys that makes the season ticket worth it.
Yeah, he's an incredible joy to watch, and he he encapsulates some of the best elements of some other of his teammates. It's really unfortunate that we haven't seen Nathan play this season due to that lengthy injury, but there's a lot of that similar fire that Nathan has when he defends, when Rodriguez defends, and as well as he shows a lot of quality further up the field as well. A bit of an update here in the 39th minute. Felipe Mora scores a go-ahead goal for Portland in that game against Austin. So that game is happening live as we're recording. Both of them are sitting at 34 points. So whoever wins that game, they'll be at 37th. They'll be within the top 9 of the Western Conference, which is at least a play-in spot, which is essentially playoffs. And they'll be 3 points behind both RSL and San Jose Earthquakes, sitting on 40 points after that game. So the first sub that the Earthquakes made was in the 64th minute. Kate Cowell off for Paul Marie. And along the same lines, that's when Real Salt Lake started to make changes as well, where Gomez and Anderson Julio came in for Rubio Rubin, which is probably the expected change. But Diego Luna, which may be a necessary change, but not ideal, at least from my perspective. We'll start with you, Abram. How did you feel Cowell did? Because was involved in that opening goal.
Uh, I think that the way Cowell was playing, if I was an RSL fan, I would have been like freaked out watching him in the first 20 minutes. Cowell was insane. He got a shot off. He was very influential in that play. Um, and I think that I don't know if everyone had this mindset, but for me, it was you know, I was watching Cowell versus Diego Luna because they were two academy mates that came up at the same time, and the Quakes, from what I've heard, is that the Quakes were like, okay, it's one or the other, and Cowell won that battle. And then I think he won the battle again tonight. I was watching Luna, and I was like, come on, do something, come on. And just he was influential in the build up, but I don't think that he was, dangerous like that we expected. And Cowell was dangerous, and he almost he was testing their goal a few times. So I was kind of surprised when he came off, but I did understand that we have to bring on another player to soak up RSL's increasing attack. And so I don't think it was the worst sub you could have made. I think that Paul Murray was fine. And then, I mean, it worked out. We won. So I can't really question Lucci there.
Yeah. I think probably you were thinking, Hayden, that there was a good chance Cowell wouldn't be available for this game because he would be playing for Bologna at this stage of the season. There's a lot of monitoring that situation, and if this really was going to be the year where Cowell would make that transition to Europe, what do you think about if Cowell does go to Europe, perhaps within 2024 or something along that timeline at this point? How do you think he would fare?
Oh, I'm not a big fan of Cowell. Just watching him at the U20 World Cup, he irritated me. Irritated me pretty bad. Every time I watched him play, I was like, get this man off. He raced to too many Diego Luna.
Fair enough. That's reason to be upset. I'll give you
that. Yeah, he pissed me off a lot. And then that mustache that he had when he was playing with U.S. men's national team and the Gold Cup also ticked me off. I was like, this man is not him. Get that mustache off and get him off. So I'm not the biggest fan of Cade. But I think a lot of RSL fans are tracking his progress because whatever happens with him will probably pretty similarly fare with Diego Luna. And that's kind of why, like Abram already mentioned it, but they came up through the academy together. And then obviously Diego goes his separate ways. Great for RSL. And I think Cowell will definitely go to Europe first. And then that kind of price line is about what we'd expect to see Luna at as well. So it'll just be interesting to see that. Now, Cowell, I think RSL fans will always be a little bit scared of him just because we'll always remember what he did to Justin Glad in 2021. Or 2021, right before all the fans came back. We definitely remember how he embarrassed Justin Glad and Eric Holt. So I think that'll always be remembered there. But outside of that, I don't think RSL fans are too worried about Cowell. Obviously, Espinoza and Abovasi is the two guys that we're really scared of. And then I was thrilled to see Grezzo not playing in this game. I was thrilled to see that he, had his international call-up, so he wasn't available. But yeah, if Cowell does go to Europe, to answer your question long-winded, I think he'll do fine. I think he's the type of player that will be able to adapt. I mean, I feel like this year he's really underperformed, at least what a lot of national expectations were. He's not the dominant player that you were hoping for. And for San Jose to be a great team, I think you need him to be a dominant player. San Jose's a good team. I think I've been high on San Jose. Ivan, we had you on the Royal Riot podcast early in the season. and I said that I expect San Jose to make the playoffs. I really
Yeah,
like
and that was at
San
a
Jose's
time where
offseason
like
moves.
I was less confident. So I do appreciate
Right.
that.
I've been watching San Jose's moves, and I've really liked them. The Guerrero move made me jealous because Augsburg is a Blitzer club. Blitzer owns RSL. And all RSL fans were hoping Guerrero would make his way over to RSL. It makes sense why he didn't, just because he'd be transferring money from ownership to ownership, same ownership. Um, but yeah, no, it's interesting to watch. But Kay Cowell needs to take a big step up if San Jose wants to be a great team. Espinoza can only do so much. He's a great player. If San Jose was higher up, he'd be an MVP candidate. He's just not high enough up. They're just not enough up in the standings. Um, but they got great players. They just need Cowell to step up.
Yeah, I agree with you on Cal. As for Espinoza, there was a time where he might have had an outside track to be an MVP candidate this season. But I think even if Quakes were like top 2 or 3 in the West, it would certainly help his case. But I think numbers wise, I think when you look at Lucia Costa in Cincinnati, Hani Mukhtar, and a few other players, I think it's going to be tough for anyone else other than that tier to catch up to them for MVP race this season. But the fact that
I
Espinoza
mean,
was in the
yeah,
conversation and has potential to be, it's a big reason why the Quakes extended his contract by 3 years this season, which will take him until
yeah,
30. And for someone that was in a Villarreal system not too long ago when he came to San Jose Earthquakes, it's a big indicator of how Espinoza feels about this club. He's willing to spend his prime years here building our project up when instead of maybe uh, using this season of his as a resume point to perhaps make a move back to Europe at some point, which could still happen as Abram flashes his very rare Christian Espinoza trading card.
Yeah, and his son actually signed the back, the B for Bastion. That's dope. The prized possession right
that's
here.
it. No, Espinoza, I love that man. I think 19 goals and assists on the
Yeah.
year, fourth in the league. Um, I think if San Jose was a top team, that I think he would be in the MVP conversation. Obviously, it's probably gonna. I think it's going to go to Acosta.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm of the belief that you give it to the best player on the best team, especially if the best team is 8 points above everyone else. Um, so I do believe it should go to Acosta, but I think Espinoza has had a great
Yeah, he
year.
absolutely has. We're really proud of him at this club. Uh, it's been a big year for Argentines, and I know it sounds redundant to say, considering not only did they win the World Cup recently, but Lionel Messi is now in MLS. But uh, your Argentine player Pablo Ruiz would be someone that, like, if he was active and available for this game, he would be in the category of RSL players I would be afraid of to play against because he's so talented.
I think if Pablo Ruiz did not get hurt, RSL would be currently sitting at second in the West. They would only be a point or two behind St. Louis, and they would be host.
I think we lost the sound there a little bit. Currently can't hear you. It doesn't look like you're muted, but just finishing what you said there, that you believe that with Pablo Ruiz healthy, that Real Salt Lake would be second in the West, which is certainly a possibility. With a player that good, he would be a difference maker to make that push that a lot of teams are trying to make in that 2 through 8 spot to separate themselves from the pack. So while we're trying to fix that situation, the last major event of note in terms of a goal scoring opportunity was a pinpoint cross that went toward Jefferson Savarino. His header went just wide. I was surprised he wasn't able to get that on target. And then from there, San Jose Earthquakes, they made a few more defensive substitutions, such as Daniel Mooney. They went to a 5 at the back. And even though they were a bit more reserved in their approach to end this game, it didn't quite feel like barely hanging off the side of a cliff, not you losing those last few fingers. It didn't feel like quite as perilous. I felt like the San Jose Earthquakes were patient. They were looking for opportunities to uh, look for that third goal if they could find it. It never came. Thankfully, it didn't need to come. And San Jose Earthquakes got a very important win at home that puts them at 40 points, even with Real Salt Lake. And it makes things a lot less scary for them in this race for the playoffs. San Jose Earthquakes have 5 games left to close the season. Real Salt Lake have 6 games left. Hayden, you want to test your mic again? Still nothing, unfortunately. Not sure what happened there. Yeah. Unfortunately, we lost. Oh, Hayden's back. Perfect.
All right,
We
I
hear
took
you
out.
now.
AirPods died. That's my bad, guys.
Oh,
So
that's what happened.
I am
Okay.
in. I am in my garage because my daughter is sleeping. So that's my bad for the listeners. Is my sound okay?
Yeah, your sound's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
Go.
think with Pablo Ruiz, we would be one of the teams in the league right now. I think we would be second in the West. I really do think that we would be hosting the Open Cup final against Lionel Messi. Um, I think that Pablo Ruiz is the most important player on Real Salt Lake, and he's not even a DP. He's not a U22 guy. But he connects the midfield in a way that none of our other midfielders can. And that injury really did come at the worst time. I don't know if we would have beat LAFC in LA, because that's always a tough task when he got injured. Um, but I certainly think that this team would be looking a lot different. And I think RSL would be an MLS Cup contender, but I just don't see that as of right now.
Fair enough. I think that's a valid point to have in this sort of tight Western Conference. Having any of your top quality players, if they miss time, that makes a big difference. So you're valid to think that. So as we close our thoughts on this game, what is your feeling about this game going into the final stretch of the season? And then I have the schedule laid out for you, Hayden. You can just give me your gut feeling prediction for the last 6 games after your closing thoughts on this match.
Well, before this match, my prediction was RSL would get second in the West. We have the easiest schedule. When you look at teams like LAFC, Seattle, Houston, teams around us, we have a very easy schedule. Now a lot of that, there wasn't a single scenario where I had that RSL didn't at least take a point out of San Jose, and maintain the distance. But I still do think that this club can get a top 4 finish and secure home field advantage. So the club has Dallas, and Dallas is an absolute massive game this week. They have Dallas, who's only 5 points behind us. They're out of the playoffs right now, so they're going to be, going hard. And then we got Vancouver, who is just above us, 1 point above us, and they're in that 4th spot on Saturday. So RSL, they got a decently easy schedule. Off the top of my head, I believe it's just Dallas, Vancouver, LAFC, Kansas, Galaxy, Colorado. I think that is our
That is
last.
absolutely correct. Yes.
Yeah, I've
So
studied this too hard, and I think that is one of the easiest schedules remaining in the league. We don't have to play a top team. LAFC is the only one that you would write in a loss. We're not going to be LAFC on the road. Everyone knows that, and that's just fine. But there are a lot of other games that are up for grabs, and I do think that this team can get a lot of points quickly. However, this team hasn't figured it out without the midfielders. We showed again in San Jose. We played, a lot of our fans are frustrated. We felt like we played better. But unfortunately, you can't show up. You can't.
yeah, I think we've got a lot of tough battles ahead ourselves. I'm not quite so expectant for our fixtures in these next 2 games. We go to Portland on Wednesday. We didn't do so great last time we were in Portland for the Leagues Cup, and pretty much we never play that well against Portland. We host Nashville, one of the strongest teams in the Eastern Conference, and then a rematch against Minnesota in Minnesota. We go to Dallas, and then decision day we host Austin. So Abram, I'm thinking out of those 15 points up for grabs, at least 9 or 10, that would be the minimum goal, hopefully.
Yeah, I think this is the point of the season where there is no okay. There is only 100%. Like, you have to dig deep. I think this goes for all teams, but especially us who are like at the bottom of the playoff, contenders. We need to dig deep, and everyone needs to be 100%. There's very little room for error at this point of the season. It's definitely going to be rough.
Yeah, I think you and Hayden share that similar mindset. Or like, we got to go in expecting to win every game. And I agree with you to that extent. I just know that this is Major League Soccer. I feel like we can write a few wins in here and there, but I feel like there's going to be some sucker punches thrown in. I don't think any team in Real Salt Lake and San Jose Earthquakes corner of the playoff race can rest easy. They got to be sleeping with one night open, keeping an eye on the standings, but most importantly, focusing on what they can control. They got 5 games left like San Jose does, 6 games left like Real Salt Lake. It's going to be a dogfight. So that's why it was fun exercise talking to you, Hayden, about what your mindset is for RSL's remaining few opponents, because those are different pieces of the puzzles that affect San Jose Earthquakes and that affect every other team in the Western Conference in this playoff mix. So it's going to be a lot of Apple TV channel surfing and looking at different games whenever we can, especially if we get so lucky to have another game week like this past week where we could watch 4 matches that weren't completely like overlapping. So it's going to be fun. Thank you for your time, Hayden. Thank you, as always, Abram, too. This is a very fun conversation. I hope you all felt this as well, especially for you Quakes fans. After this big, much-needed win, we needed this win more than Crazy George needed a drum. Like, that's how important this win was. But credit to RSL for a great game and for having great fans like Hayden. I hope you all have a good night. Thank you for listening.